Someday.
Do we want to maybe move on to global resource distribution?
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, so this is really, really big. Literally, it's the biggest thing. It's global resource distribution. Think
Mm,
about your like where things come from. Again, everything that we have in our possession, whether it's the air mattress that I'm sleeping on, the headboard on the bed frame, or the window, the door, the paint on the walls, everything about my lived experience, these products were produced with fossil fuels in their creation or in their transportation. So, life cycle analysis. What are the resources involved in not just the production of something, but its transportation? What is its actual footprint on the planet as it gets made, distributed, and used? And everything in my life, right, is part of this, what we call a treadmill of production, where there is a constant need for new things, new resources to get mined and to create the new iPhone, the new, laptop computer. It's a never-ending cycle, right? Because there's progress being made. And Moore's law, I believe it is, and I could be misremembering laws, but um, technology improves at an exponential rate, right? We're being able to store things on infinitely smaller size chips, and it's like every other year, and our TVs are getting way more higher def. Like it's $200 for like a 50-inch 4K TV, smart TV, versus like a fucking like bubble TV, bubble screen TV would be like $300 20 years ago. Not even like 10,
right.
15 years ago. It's
Times
crazy.
Right.
2 times the back problem. I don't miss those TVs.
No, no. Just give me ones I can fold up, right?
Right.
Stuff it in my pocket.
TV should be a two moving job.
Yeah, so think about it. When you think about that TV that came from China or wherever, or Taiwan, or all these manufacturing giants, globally speaking, right? They're having to get their resources from somewhere. They have to, in a lot of cases, go to Africa and get their mined resources like copper and wiring and gold and precious metals that take a lot to acquire, both in terms of cost to the planet and in terms of social costs. The ladder of who's involved, or rather the chain of who's involved, not everybody's getting special treatment, right? In fact, it's pretty rare along that way that people are getting everything that they need out of the transaction. So there's a lot of instances in these African countries where mining is running rampant for these precious metals. In that process, there's a lot of waste that gets generated when you're mining for precious metals. And that can sometimes be radioactive, not typically, but it causes health issues for these African natives, right? And they're having to bear that cost on their health when they're just kind of being forced into this situation, right? They didn't really ask to have these precious metals in their backyard. They didn't ask to have Bill Gates and Microsoft and all these other tech giant companies to come and say, hey, we're the good guys, trust us, here's malaria vaccines, and all these other
Yeah.
things that are more performative than truly impactful. And we have a big global resource distribution network that's caked up with crime and destitution and just kind of like taking off the backs of the working poor. And that's globally speaking. In America, it's gotten worse in comparison to, say, Europe. But even Europe has its own issue of, taking its wealth, perceived wealth, from the backs of the poor. And that's most rich countries, most rich organizations, rich entities. They have to get their power and their capital from other people, other things that serve them, right? And so the power of renewable energy, as people own it for themselves is they're able to break that cycle. They're able to, instead of earning or working on someone else's dream, they're able to become independent if in the process of owning their full source of energy, their full source of food, their full source of water, right? If you're fully self-sufficient, what do you have to work for anymore?
Nikki,
True.
the possible incentive why some companies or countries want these resources to be the main backbone, like you depend on us, and if things change, it's going to be bad for us. I'm just getting a little conspiratorial. Had a couple.
No, well, rephrase that question. I don't think I understood the front of the question. What were you asking?
So you're kind of saying, oh, there it is. I lost my train of thought.
Happens every episode.
Every it kind of comes down to like the people will depend on you like with the energy, right? The more you
And
go down along those lines, the more you are dependent on.
what do you mean? Who's you? Are you talking about me, Nick Tvrdy? Are you talking about?
That's this whole question.
No,
Okay.
I think what Ryan's getting at is that countries that say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, is countries that produce oil or produce certain natural resources, it's in their best interest to make other countries dependent on those natural resources, right? Because you take a country like Venezuela or countries like the Saudi, UAE, which I'm right next to right now, that their entire economy is based on the fossil fuels. And when it's in their best interest to make sure that the rest of the world stays dependent on oil, otherwise these billionaires aren't billionaires anymore. And you can take that big scale, but you can also kind of condense it into a smaller scale with the lobbying power of these coal companies, these natural resource extraction, and as you were saying, in parts of Africa, where these companies are mining, like I forget the material that's used in iPhones for the chips. What are those called? There's a specific material that's called starts with an S. I'm blanking on the name, but it's used in the chips for computers and for cell phones, and it's mined in Africa. But as you're saying, it's these people aren't getting equal wages for anything, but they're making it seem like we have to have phones in order to keep that process going. And I think that's kind of what Ryan's trying to get at is it's in companies, states, people's best interests to make you feel like you're dependent. And that kind of fuels this global resource distribution that you've been speaking on.
This right here is one of the most impactful things that anyone could watch. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's the extraction through sale, use, and disposal. All stuff in our lives affects communities at home and abroad, yet most of it is hidden from view. So the story of stuff, this is just like a 20-minute, fast-paced, fact-filled look at the underside of our production and consumption patterns. The story of stuff exposes the connections between a huge number of environmental and social issues and calls us together to create a more sustainable and just world. It'll teach you something, it'll make you laugh, it may change the way you look at stuff in your life forever. The story of stuff.
Story of stuff.
Yeah, I can share that with you, and you can share that with the audience. The real gist of it is that the lesson to be learned about the life cycle analysis of goods and services, particularly all these resources that come from other continents, when we understand that process, it gives me great pause personally. It makes me very upset. It makes me very appalled. It makes me scared. It makes me a little bit nervous because what are we going to do instead, right? How are we going to stop? How are we going to transition away in a way where people can keep their luxuries and be happy and not feel like they're totally attacked, and we can make good choices for Mother Earth, right?